All right, thanks everyone for joining us again. This is the Lovelytics team, and I'm just going to share my screen to make sure that we all know the topics that we're covering today. Shouldn't be too long. Everyone's here to see Chantilly, so no worries. But just to recap, so today we're going to go over the modern social marketing dashboard, the one that Chantilly had recently shared. Allows you to toggle back and forth and achieve that dark theme. Again, your Lovelytics team, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, great to have you. For those who've joined us for the last couple of webinars, awesome to have you back. Again, I'm Mike Rooney, the guy who kind of goes on a little bit too long at the beginning and then sends the email at the end. And then, of course, Chantilly will be presenting today on the dashboard. Again, Lovelytics, we're a DC-based Tableau partner. And then this is what we're doing today. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to let Chantilly take control, and we will be recording today's session, so that'll be available after the fact, and we'll also do Q&A at the end. So don't hesitate to use the Q&A or the chat buttons for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our second tutorial. Today, I'm going to go over creating the modern social marketing dashboard and really start to show you all some of the design secrets behind it. The way I try to break these sessions down are to tailor them towards the non-designer, because I pretty much consider myself a non-designer. Right. And as Mike mentioned, I am the Vice President of Data Visualization and Training at Lovelytics. All righty. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'll walk through the dashboard that we're going to look at today. Here is the paid social dashboard. So this dashboard encompasses, this workbook encompasses two main dashboards, one that looks at social paid marketing and another that looks at organic marketing. So we have a couple of metrics on how our marketing has performed. So we're looking at spend, impressions, and likes across various platforms. And then we have a breakdown of each of the social platforms down below. So what are some metrics that we think about when we look at Facebook? So we have clicks, comments, impressions, likes, shares, and spend. And we have a breakdown of very similar metrics for each of these social platforms. As we go through this webinar, you'll hear me use social platform and channel interchangeably. They mean essentially the same thing. So when I'm referring to a channel or a social platform, I'm speaking about one of these marketing platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Other things that you can do with this dashboard, you can look at the latest month. So first you can select the metric that you would like to see, whether it's the latest month, the latest quarter, or the latest year. You can see the aggregated number for it, the month over month difference. So if you're looking at a monthly view, you can see the month over month difference. If I change this to the latest quarter, you can see the quarter over quarter difference, and the same thing for year. You can also adjust the bar chart to the right, which has a monthly view. You can adjust which metric is being displayed on the bar chart. And as you do that, there's a button right here that highlights to show you which metric is selected for each of the social platforms, right? So I'll show you all how to do some of these things today as well. Also, as you toggle between one of your date selections, so if you're viewing date latest month, latest quarter, or latest year, your bar chart is also going to adjust to highlight whatever that selection is. So right now we're highlighting the latest year's worth of data. So this data is as of December of 2019. So we're highlighting all of 2019 because of the latest year selection. What you all, I think, came to really see is how to enable this toggle. So typically when I design dashboards, I love these really dark backgrounds. And I just prefer them, but not all users prefer them. So one of the neat things that we built into this dashboard is the toggle to switch from night mode, as you see here, to a light version. So if I select that, the whole dashboard now changes to have a white background. The metrics, the shading of the metrics change as well. The bar colors change, but everything else pretty much stays the same. So today I'm going to walk you all through exactly how to create a lot of the various things that you see within this dashboard. So I'll quickly go back to PowerPoint and show you what we are going to talk about today. Alrighty, so our focus points for today's webinar. One, I'm going to show you how to gather the requirements for this and create the template. So the background image that you see here is a template that was used in a tool called Figma. So I'll show you how I went about creating this within Figma. Next, I'll teach you how to create background images in Tableau so that we can enable that toggle. So how do we transition between the white dashboard and the black dashboard and vice versa? Next, I'll go into creating the background toggle button. So specifically, how did I create this button here? I'll also talk about how to dynamically change the text color based on the background that's selected. So whenever the background is black, the text changes to white. Whenever the background is white, the text changes to black. So I'll show you how to do that. I'll also show you how to dynamically change the bars colors based on the date selection. So as I showed you, when latest quarter is selected, you have a view of the quarters. When month is selected, it's highlighting just one month. And then last but not least, we're going to go into exactly how I use the toggle to display the latest selection or the current selection. So gathering requirements. The requirements for this dashboard were that we wanted to create an interactive dashboard that analyzes the company's paid and organic marketing data for each of the social platforms. So those platforms are Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And even though we wanted to create two dashboards, the tutorial today will focus strictly on the paid dashboard. Some of the metrics that we wanted to display were the total spend, the total impressions, and the total likes across all of the platforms. Then we wanted to look at about 5 to 6 metrics for each of the platforms, a monthly trend view for each of the metrics and each of the platforms, and then the ability to change the metrics based off of the latest week's data, the latest month, and then the latest quarter. So those were the key things that we wanted to incorporate in this dashboard. Next, let's talk about creating a template. Here are the focus areas that you want to consider when you're creating a modern template. You want to be sure to start with an example in mind. If you all attended my last webinar, I showed you all some of the sites that I get inspiration from. And that's kind of where I started with this as well. I went to Dribble, I went to Pinterest, and I looked at some examples. So first, you want to make sure you start with an example in mind. Second, you want to make sure you're incorporating a lot of white space in your dashboard. Even if it's a black dashboard, you can call that like dark space, but you just want to give the elements in your dashboard a lot of room to breathe. Next, you want to be sure that you're designing to a grid. You want to incorporate drop shadows, which are the shadings that you see around each of the boxes. You want to incorporate rounded corners as well, and then try to incorporate large bands, so the numbers that you have at the top of the dashboard. So the example that I started with in mind is the image that you see to the left-hand side. There is a new trend in UI that's called neomorphism design. And what that is pretty much, you see these buttons here, they tend to look as if they're protruding or extending off of the background. And that's nothing fancy. All it is 2 drop shadows, one positive and one negative. So to the right, the picture on the right shows you exactly how some of those drop shadows are aligned. So to make an image appear as if it's extending off the dashboard, you essentially are going to have, as I mentioned, 2 drop shadows, a positive and a negative. One of those drop shadows, as you see here, is going to be dark, and the other one is going to be light. So I wanted to incorporate this neomorphism design into my dashboard. So this was the example that I started with. So if you're wondering exactly how to generate that negative and that positive look and feel, here's a tool that I found that allows you to test out various shadings to incorporate that neomorphism design. So I'll navigate to the website really quickly. And here on this website, neomorphism.io, you can start by selecting a color. So if you want your dashboard to be white or if you want it to be black, you can start by selecting that. So I'll select like a dark gray, press OK. And then you can determine the size that you want the square to be on your dashboard. So as we're creating our dashboard, we probably want to incorporate, small or large rectangles. So you can determine exactly how big or small you want those rectangles to be. You can then adjust the radius, which is the rounded corners of the square. So we can increase that or decrease that. And then the latter points, I really like these because it allows you to adjust the intensity, the distance, and the blur. So how much do you want your image to appear as if it's extending off of the background? So we can increase or decrease the distance. We can increase or decrease the intensity. So the lower the intensity, the less it appears as though it's extending off of the dashboard. And the more the intensity, it appears as if it's extending. So once you get to that point that you really like what you see and you're like, okay, I want to use that, like say for instance, something like this, they generate a code down below that provides you with exactly how you can then use this code, how you can use this code to create your template in Figma, which is where we're going to build this out at. So it provides you with the code that you need in order to create this rectangle with that neomorphism look and feel. So it gives you the background color, exactly how you need to round your corners, the size of that, and then it provides you with information on the shadows itself. So the positives and the negatives, the color of them, and then the distance of it. So next, let's go ahead and transition over to Figma, which is where I built the background images that you see on the dashboard. So coming into Figma, you're always presented with a blank canvas. So the step one for creating a background image or a background in Figma is typically to just construct the background itself. So my backgrounds are always like squares. So you just want to start by dragging in and creating a rectangle. So to create a rectangle, you navigate to your toolbar up top, you select rectangle, and then you simply just draw a rectangle. You want to size this rectangle the same size that your dashboard is going to be. So my dashboard is going to be 1350 by 1730. And then you can type that in there. Next, I want to color the background of this. So I'm going to click on the square itself or the rectangle, and the code that I'm going to use, or the fill code, I can change it right here. So it's going to be 282828. And there I have the background of the dashboard, right? So this is good to go. Next, I'll navigate to step two. Step two, now that we have the background itself, is to begin to place those rectangles on the dashboard. So I'm going to take a rectangle, a new rectangle, and draw it on the dashboard. And this is going to represent the band areas that I want here. And then down below, those are going to represent, other rectangles are going to represent the various channels or the platforms. So we'll start with one rectangle, and then we'll duplicate this rectangle once we make it perfect and exactly how we like it. So with the neomorphism design, the key is to make sure that you're, one, using the same color as the background or a very close color, because you want to make it seem as if this object is protruding off of this background, and the background color is essentially going to be the same as this square. So you kind of want to keep these two very similar in color. So first, I'll change the color of this to 2B, 2B, 2C, something that's really close and blends in with the background. Next, I'll change the radius of the corners to 30, and this is going to change all of the corners. Now, the key to neomorphism design is that you want to make sure that you have two drop shadows. So Figma makes it really easy to create drop shadows. First, you click on the object, and then under effects, you click plus. And when you do that, the default effect is going to be a drop shadow. To edit the dimensions of this drop shadow, you simply select the sun icon next to it. And here is where you can edit the blur, the X and the Y coordinates, the color, and then the opacity of the shading for that drop shadow. So I've already provided you all with exactly what some of these metrics should be for this bottom drop shadow. So I'll just go ahead and plug that in. Our blur is going to be 12. Our X will be 4. Our Y will be 4. Our color is going to stay as the zeros, so, all black. And then we're going to change the blur percentage, or the opacity to 20%. And as you can see, it starts to stick off the dashboard just a little bit. Now we need to incorporate the second fill. So or the second effect. So you simply select the plus icon next to effects again, and it adds in another drop shadow. And you can edit this drop shadow the same way you did your first one. So the key to neomorphism design is to have the opposite of the first drop shadow. You want it to be in the left corner instead of the right corner. So let's do that. Our second drop shadow, the color of it is going to be lighter as well. Remember, there's a light side and a dark side. So we want to make this side or this corner light, like this example. So light and dark. So for this one, we're going to change the color to EC, EC, EC. And that gives the light color. We'll change the blur and leave it at 12. But for the X and the Y coordinates, we don't want it to be at 4 and 4 because that's this section here. To get it to the top left corner, we need to change it to -4 and -4. And then last but not least, we'll change the opacity of the color to 7%. And there we have it. Now we have our square, and it seems to me like it looks pretty good. So from here, instead of creating, multiple squares, I'm simply just going to press Control-C and duplicate it. So here's square 2, here's square 3. And then you can do the same thing for the channels. So here we have another one for the channels. Copy that. Another one for the second channel. Another one for the third channel. And your last channel. And once you position your last box, you can hold Shift and select each of these. And what you can do is you can align these and adjust the space between them evenly. So as you see here, this space is a little bit larger than these two. So we want to distribute the space evenly. So to do that, you simply just hold Shift and select all 4 of them. You click the drop down and you say distribute vertical space. And now it shifts it to be even. So there we have our background with our band areas and our social platform areas as well. So step 3 is now going to be to create the toggle that you see in the top. So to create that toggle, I'm simply using another one of these squares. So I'm just duplicating one of these squares by holding Control-C and then Control-V. I'm going to change the size of this square to be something smaller so that it can fit in the corner. And I want to round the edges of it a little bit more for that toggle. So to do that, you can either manually adjust it or you can type it in on the right-hand side. So the width of this is going to be 75. The height of it will be 22. And then I'm going to round the corners to 100 radius. And I can zoom in to show you all what this looks like. 75. Alrighty, so there it is right there. Next, we want to add the circle on top of it, right? So to add the circle for the dark mode, I'm simply going to add in a new shape. It'll be a simple circle. We can adjust the size of the circle by typing it in 1515 and then change the fill of it to white. So your white hex code is 6Fs. And now you'll take that and you'll simply drag it right on top of this toggle. And there we have it. So step 4 now is to add in the various icons. So we want to add in icons for the night mode to identify that you're on the moon side of it or the dark mode. We want to add in icons to the bands. And then we also want to add in icons for each of the social areas. Now, the reason that I am adding in the icon on these images is so that I don't have to do that step within Tableau and everything can be a part of my image all at once. So to add in an image, you simply select the drop down once again, and you select place image. So you find the image that you want to bring in. So the image that I want to bring in is in my downloads folder. So you find one of the images, and let's start with the moon. So you'll press open, and you don't want to place your image on anywhere on your canvas, right? So if you try to place it on any one of these squares or any one of these rectangles, what's going to happen is that Figma is going to try to use it to fill that entire space. So to get it to not fill the space of this square, like autofill this square, you want to simply place it on the left side of the canvas, not touching anything that you've already created. And from there, you can just simply size it accordingly and drag it to the top. So once I add in all of the icons, this is what it will look like, right? So we've added in the icons here the exact same way. The moon, we've added in the other icons, I've added in the social icons, and then I've also added in the export buttons up top. Simply the exact same way as doing a place image and then placing it on the dashboard. So next you want to add in font. You can add in font to Figma. And the font that we want to add in are for the buttons that are going to be up top, as well as each of the social platforms. To do that, you select text instead of selecting a shape, and you can click and drag anywhere that you please. And then you can just simply type in. So here, if we want to say Twitter, type in Twitter. You can change the fill of it to white, but you have to select the text first and then change the fill. And then you can adjust the font style as well as the font height, so the font size itself. So we can take that and we can drag it right next to the icon, and you'll do the exact same thing for each of the platforms. And when you have that, this is what it will look like. So now that everything kind of checks out, everything looks good to me, you simply just want to duplicate this. So you want a black version and you want a white version. To duplicate something, you right-click on the page that you want to duplicate, and you select duplicate. And from there, you can then hold Shift, select each of these squares, and change the fill of them. So we'll change the fill to white. And you'll do the same for your background. And now you have a white version, and you'll go ahead and do the edits to each of the icons as well as the text shading for the white version. And once you're done, you have your black version and you'll have your white version. You can change the drop shadows for the white version if you like. I kept them very similar in color, but you can change it if you like. You can even use this tool, as I mentioned, to pick white and determine exactly how you want to size that radius and how much blur you want for it. And then you would just build in those exact coordinates here by selecting each of these and then adjusting the effects. If your rectangles have the same effect on them, so if you've duplicated it the exact same way that I did in the beginning, once I created the first square, I went ahead and just duplicated it a bunch of times. If you do that correctly, then you can hold Control or Shift, select each of them, and change the drop shadows simultaneously for both of them. So from there, you will then export each of your images. So here's our final image for the black version, and then our final image for the white version. And to export, you simply just click on the page that you want to export, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the export button. Deselect all of the elements except for your dashboard image, and then press export, and you'll see it download automatically to your computer. You can do the same thing for white. Export it and download it. So now we have the two versions locally on our machine. So from there, we are then going to transition into Tableau. So let's talk about bringing in background images in Tableau. Now, I needed to use a background image instead of just adding it to a dashboard because I wanted to incorporate the functionality of the toggle. So you can go the long way of using separate dashboards to do that toggle. However, you're going to have to duplicate those worksheets, and the process can become a little bit complex. So I went the route of using background images so that everything is within one worksheet. All of the backgrounds are within one worksheet, and I didn't have to go through the process of duplicating multiple worksheets, multiple charts in order to establish that toggle. So step one is going to be to create a new worksheet, right? In order to bring in a background image within Tableau, you have to have an axis. So you have to have an x-axis and a y-axis. You can create a placeholder axis by using min of 0. So that'll be step one, to create your min of 0 calculation. And simply type in min of 0 and press OK. You'll then take this calc and place it on rows as well as columns. And you now have an X and a Y axis. From there, Tableau automatically changes the mark type to a circle. So to get rid of this circle, I'm simply just going to change the mark type to a polygon, and it gets rid of it for me. Next, to insert that image that we just created, you select Map in your toolbar, hover over background images, and then select the data source that contains the background image. So our data source is going to be the background image demo. So I'll click that, and you'll add an image here. So the first image that we're going to add is the black background. You locate the file. So the file is here. This is the dark version. And then you specify the X field and the Y field. Your X field and your Y fields need to be that placeholder that we just created. So that's the min of 0 field. Your left is going to be 0, and then the right is going to be the width of the dashboard. So we sized it at 1350, so our right will then be 1350. Our Y field is also going to be min of 0, and our bottom is going to be 0, and the top of it is going to be 1730, which is the height of our dashboard. Then we press OK, and now you see the dashboard in the background. Now you can add in the white dashboard as well by selecting Add Image. We call this white background. From there, you want to, once again, locate that white background, press Open, and do the exact same thing. So our right will be 1350, our top will be 1730, and when you press OK and apply, you're gonna see it be placed right on top of the black dashboard. And that's okay for right now because we're gonna tell Tableau when to show each of these images. Clean it up a little bit by hiding your axis. So we'll hide the axis here by deselecting Show Header, Show Header. You can get rid of the map options by selecting Map, then Options, and deselecting Allow Pan and Zoom, and deselecting Show View Toolbar. Now from there, we need to tell Tableau exactly when to display each of these maps. To do that, we're gonna create a parameter. Our parameter, wrong thing. Our parameter is going to have the two options of black and white, so the dark and the light version. So background, I'll call this version 3. Our data type will be a string, and the values that are going to be able to pass through this parameter are going to be, I'm just gonna keep it simple and say black and white. That's it. You just have to say black and white and then tell Tableau when to show the black one and when to show the white one. And you press OK. Next, a parameter isn't effective and has no value unless you create a calculated field that activates that parameter. So create a calculated field and tell this parameter what to do. So I'll call this background color. So for the case of this parameter, which is the version 3.1, when the parameter states black, then we want to show the black background. When it states white, then we want to show a white background. End. Then you press OK. And now you have your background color parameter. From there, you can now use this calculation to toggle between when to show the black and the white background. So I'll take this calculation and place it on the marks card, and it'll go to details. The reason being is because in order to activate a parameter, you have to use the calculation that controls the parameter. You have to use it somewhere in your view. We don't want to use it in columns. We don't want to use it in rows. So the best place for it to be in the view is going to be on detail in your marks card. You're adding it to context for your view. Next, we can go back to map, select options, wrong thing, map, background images, go back to the original window that shows the background images. And now we can edit these. So I'll edit the black background, and under options, you can say only show when, and now we want to call on this parameter. So we only want to show the black background when this calculation is equal to black. So we'll select add, we'll say background color, press OK, and we'll select black. And then we'll press apply. And because the parameter's default was set to black, the black background shows. And then we'll press OK and press OK again. Now I'm going to show this parameter so that I can navigate to the white dashboard and apply the exact same logic to the white background. So even though it shows, I just want to be safe and build in that additional piece of logic in case I happen to bring in like a red dashboard or a gray dashboard or something. So map again, background images, select the data source, and apply the same logic to your white background. Options, add, background color, OK, and then white. And press OK again. And OK one more time, making sure both of them are valid. And now we can toggle. So our parameter works. Let's place this background image now on our dashboard. So you create a dashboard, you size the dashboard the exact same size that we've been using, so 1350 by 1730. And then you will drag in the background image as a floating worksheet. You'll hide the title on it, and you can keep the parameter selector right here, but you want to change the height of this to be 1350, the width of it to be 1350, and the height to be 1730. And you will position it at 0, 0 for your X and your Y. And now we can see it change. From here, I'm going to add a blank, like a blank text box or blank box on top of this, only because when you hover over background images and you zoom in and zoom out, it's going to adjust it. And I want to disable this zoom. You see that? To disable the zoom, I'm basically just going to place a placeholder blank object on top of it. And I'll size this one exactly the same. So 1350. And the height of it will be 1730, and we will position it exactly the same. So now once we do that, and you scroll up and down or you zoom in and out, it's not going to adjust the zoom of your background image. The reason it's zooming is because it's on a continuous axis, and you can zoom in and out of your line charts and anything that's on a continuous axis. So now our background images is working. And instead of using the drop down, we want to use a toggle here, right? We want to use a toggle and create a parameter that's going to change this. We don't want our users to use this drop down. We want them to use this image to the left-hand side. So let's go ahead and create that background toggle button. To create the button, I'm basically going to first create a worksheet that has values that I want to pass through to the button. So here I've created an Excel spreadsheet that contains a value column and a display column, very similar to what you see in a parameter window. You have the value and then you have the display. And I've simply just typed in the black and the white for each of these. I've mimicked it exactly the same. So I'm gonna hold Control-C, copy this, and if you didn't know, you can just paste into Tableau and it's going to open up a clipboard. So it automatically placed it in, and we have a new clipboard that's added there, right? So here I'm going to take the display and place it on columns, and I'm going to take the value and place it on text. I'm also going to change the order of this. I want the black one to be to the right side because that's exactly how it looks on our dashboard. The black or the dark background is to the right and the white one is to the left, right? So this is good to go. Next, we want to use this worksheet on our dashboard. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard and I'm going to bring this worksheet in onto the dashboard as a floating image. Hide the title, and we can say entire view. And I'm going to create a dashboard action. And this is going to be a parameter action. So here you select add action and you want to change parameter. We want to use the toggle button, which is this, to change the background of the image. Our target parameter is going to be the one that we created and we're using for the demo, right? So our parameter that is controlling this background image is called background. And the value that we want to pass through to the parameter is going to be from this clipboard that we just pasted, and that's the value column. So basically, when we click on the word black here, we want Tableau to recognize that it says black and pass that word black to the parameter selection that we had created in our background image. Press OK, press OK again. And now when I press black, it should be on black, and when I press white, it should navigate to white. So all it's doing is passing this value through, this word value through. That's why it's important to essentially write this and name this exactly as the parameter that is originally controlling your background image itself. So remember, I kept everything lowercase and I did that for a reason. So it's essentially just passing this word through to the parameter. Now we can edit this, right? I don't need to display the header. I can change this from being, instead of a text, I can change this to a shape. I can remove the value. You want to keep it on the marks card because remember, it's using the value of this selection. You want to keep it on the marks card, but you don't necessarily want to display it as text. So we'll just drag it to value. That way we know this one is still black and this one is still white. Then from there, you want to increase the size of it, of your shape. You want to hide your row dividers. And then you want to change your shape image. Instead of it being circles, you want to change that to your blank background. So I created a blank image and I placed it in my Tableau repository. A blank image is just a transparent image. It has no fill, it has no borders, but it's still an image. And I placed that in my Tableau repository within the folder called Modern Dashboard that I already created. I'll navigate to that folder here, and blank is the first one. Press apply. And the shapes are still there, but it's just a transparent image. So you see here is still the white one, and here's still the black one. And I'll take off the tooltip. And now when I go back to the dashboard, entire view, I can now select the right and the left corner. To remove the worksheet so that it's not white and you can see the toggle behind it, simply right click and just remove your worksheet background and just size it accordingly. So now you select here, you're going white, here, you're going dark. Awesome. So let's continue on. So now that you have your parameters created and you're toggling and changing the background, you need to make sure that you're dynamically changing your text color as well. So whenever we are displaying a black background, we want our text to be white so that it shows on that black background. And whenever we are showing a white background, we want our text to be dark. So here I've created the KPI for spend, so the band for spend already. But what I'll show you all here is that I had to create another calculation that basically said color of text labels. And this calculation is what I'm going to use on color on the marks card. So for the case of the parameter of the background, right, when it says black, then we want to display black, or excuse me, want to display white text. And when it is white, we then want to display the black text and end. And you press OK. We'll take this and we'll drag it to color. And right now, I'll hide this card and show the parameter that I based it off of. Show parameter control here. So when the background is white, so when the parameter is equal to white, we want the text to display as black. So let's change the color of the text to black. And when the parameter is equal to black, we want the text to be white. So we'll change this and we'll make it white. So you can't see it, but it's still there. And now it's changing colors. So that's how you change your mark labels. However, that color change only works for mark labels. So these are your marks here, right? And these are your headers. It's not going to work for your headers. You can't dynamically change the color of your headers. So you want to ensure that you are using a color for your headers that can be compatible, or that is compatible with both your black and your white background. So the color that I used here was like a medium light gray, so that it can be seen on both a dark and a white background. So you just remember, you can only change the color of your marks using your marks card, and you cannot change the color of your headers. Next, I'll show you how to dynamically change the colors of your bars based off of the selection. So here we are changing the selection and we are displaying the latest quarter once latest quarter is selected, and the latest year once the year is selected. We're also changing these bars to display based off of the background color. So when it's black, the bars will darken. When it's white, the bars will lighten. So how do we do that? Just like the text color, you want to create your date colors as well as your bar colors. So step one is going to be to create your date selection, and then create a calculated field that activates that date selection. So I won't go through exactly how to create this calculation, but basically what this calc is saying is that when the choose a view, which is the date parameter, when it's equal to the latest month, then we want the month here that's on the line chart to be the highest month that's in the view. So we want these two to equal. So if this month is equal to the max month in the view, then we want to highlight it, else everything else should be false. So this is a true false statement. If the latest quarter is selected, then we want the latest quarter here to equal whatever that max latest quarter is. So we want Tableau to find the max quarter, which is these 3 bars, and color them and leave everything else a neutral color. And the same thing for latest year. So once you do that, you'll first add that to color. And you'll see when latest year is selected, all the years are selected. When latest month is selected, then the first month will be selected. Then from there, you want to create a calculation that activates your parameter. So when should these bars be light and when should they be dark? To do that, you will create your calculation very similar to how we created the one for text. So when the background is equal to black, then we want these bars to be black. When it's equal to white, then we want it to be white. Press OK. And you can also add this to color, but you can't drag it directly to color on your marks card. You have to first drag it to detail and then select the detail icon and change it to color. And now we have it there. So this is saying this is true and this is false. And last but not least, we want this to be related specifically to the channel. So we can take channel, and channel is filtered to Facebook right now. We can take channel, add it to detail, and then do the exact same thing. Go here and add it to color. And now we have 3 options. So when it's true and it's Facebook and it's a white background, anything true should just display the channel color. Anything false and Facebook and then white should display the white color. And now if we change this to black, we have to do the exact same thing. So true means that the bar selected is equal to whatever the view is. So that should be the Facebook color. And then false is all of the other bars and the background color. So those should be gray. And that's how we did the toggle there. So next you'll add your charts to your dashboard. So here I created each of the charts and I placed them on the dashboard. So we have our bands up top, and then we have our charts down below for each of the channels. From there, you'll add in your bar charts as well. So we're just placing in the bar charts, and I use the X and the Y coordinates to perfectly align these. 475, 475, 475, right? So next we wanted to incorporate that selected metric view. To do that, you'll simply create a chart that has the metric for a particular channel. So I filtered this one to just show Facebook, and I'm looking at all of the metrics for Facebook. And instead of placing like text here, I simply changed the mark type to a circle. So the automatic view for it will probably be something along the lines of this, but you can change your mark type to a circle and increase or decrease the size of it. Now we want to use this on our dashboard right next to the metrics for Facebook, as well as each of the respective channels. So to do that, we want to hide the header here because we don't want the audience to see that. And before you navigate from this sheet, you want to make sure that you're telling Tableau to always show empty rows. So if we did not have empty rows selected and a user selected one of these metrics and it's going to filter this, what's going to happen is that if I drag this here and I select just show spend, the circle is then going to just appear for spend and all of the other metrics are going to go away. We don't want that to be the case because we want this circle to move up and down along each of the metrics based off of whichever one is selected. This is just going to be in the center. So to get around that, you have to just tell Tableau to show empty rows. And that way, spend is going to align with spend on the dashboard, shares will align with shares, and as we toggle between them, this button is going to move. Hide your header, and then you want to go ahead and add it to your dashboard. So to place it on the dashboard, I simply just drag the worksheet onto the canvas, and here's where we have it, right? So we perfectly aligned it. We got rid of the header. And now from here, you want to add in your action. So dashboard, action, add in a new action. It's going to be a filter action. And this one is going to be, the source sheet will be our Facebook buttons. So those are these. And then we want this, actually not our Facebook buttons, our Facebook details, which is this chart. So we want the users to select on this chart. So select this chart and then adjust the buttons as well as the bar chart. So it's actually the details. And the target sheets that we want are going to be our Facebook buttons, our Facebook bar, and that's it. We want to change the action to run on select, and we want to leave the filter, meaning when a user selects the word click here, it should adjust the bar chart to show click. It should also adjust this circle to just be highlighted for click, and nothing else should adjust until we select a new metric. So that's why we have Facebook details, which is the name of this chart. And then for our target sheets, we have the Facebook buttons, which is this chart, and then our Facebook bar. So these are the only charts that are going to change. We don't want to change anything else for any of the other platforms. And then you press OK again. And now you select comments. You select comments, and what you'll see here is I did not apply the empty rows to this. So be sure, as I mentioned, to select show empty rows. And now we go back to the dashboard. It should align perfectly. There we go. And then you select impressions. So the key here is to just make sure that you have empty rows shown. Because as you saw, when I didn't have it shown, even though I selected comments, it went directly to the middle of this as if I had impressions selected. And we don't want that. We want it to align perfectly. So last but not least, you're going to complete that for each of your channels. So you have to add in their buttons and then create the actions for each of them. So I've created one for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Each of these basing it off of the respective channels. So you select the details for Twitter. It's going to adjust the Twitter buttons as well as the Twitter bar chart. And then everything is a leave filter. And last but not least, you want to add in your export functionality. So remember, on our dashboard, we have these buttons here in the top right-hand corner, but these were just images. We have to activate these images as buttons. So I'm going to take a export object, which is available in 2020, Tableau version 2020, drag it to the canvas and drop it. You can edit this button, this export button, tell Tableau what it should export as. We'll change the first one to an image. The export button style can be a text or an image button. I'll change this to an image button. And then the image that we want is going to be a blank box. Now, the reason we want to display a blank box is because we already have an image here. So we're just creating like that transparent effect again, just so that we have a selection there. Our image is just a blank image that has no fill and no outline. So I'll do that, press open, press OK, and size this one accordingly, and now drag it on top of here. And you'll do the exact same thing for your PDF one. And when all is said and done, your final dashboard will look like this. You have your navigation between dark and light mode. You have your toggle for each of the date levels, so month, quarter, and year. So here's quarter. We're going to highlight quarters. You have your toggle for each of the channels. That is going to drive this button as well as the bar charts. Scroll down, do the same thing for Twitter. And as I change this, the name here changes as well, which is just a simple edit of the title and making sure the word metric is displayed there. Then last but not least, we have our buttons here. So these have transparent images floating on top of them that represent the export objects on in Tableau. So I click this, it downloads the image. I click this, it downloads the PDF. Alrighty, so I'll navigate really quickly back to PowerPoint and do a recap. So here I just walked you all through within the hour how to create your requirements, build your template. We went through creating this toggle button, the selection here, the dynamically changing the text colors, dynamically changing your background images based off of this toggle. And then we also went over how to dynamically change the color of the bars based off of whatever is selected for your dates. Some of the tools that we discussed today, you can add them to your designer bag. For inspiration, I use Dribble and Pinterest. Here's where you can simply type in modern dashboard or dark theme dashboard or anything of that nature, and you'll see a plethora of images that have dashboards that users have already created. And you can use that as an example of how to get started and really some really good inspiration. Next, for the template development, we used Figma. And for the neomorphism design, to determine how to size some of the background stuff and how to code that, we use neomorphism.io. All icons that were used in the visualization came from flaticon.com. That includes the social media platform icons as well as the band area icons. So I hope you all enjoyed the session. Thank you all so much for attending. Mike, I'll turn it back over to you. And last but not least, the recording for this is going to be available on designsecretsforanondesigner.com. This is where we're hosting all of our recorded sessions. So if you want to go back and watch this and practice along with me, then be sure to check out my blog at designsecretsforanondesigner.com. And if you want to contact me, email me at chantillyjagannath@Lovelytics, and my Twitter handle is @shanjag. Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you all so much for attending. If you have questions, be sure to place it in the chat in the Q&A section.
Yeah, thanks, Chantilly. That was awesome. We just got a few questions. Thank you for also pointing out, yeah, the recording will be available. You'll get a message once Zoom sends us the recording. So I'll upload that. It'll be on Chantilly's blog. And you'll also have a link to that in the follow-up email. So Chantilly, I'm just going through a couple of these questions. For data sets to model what we did today, where do you recommend people begin if you're using some of the social media data that you displayed today? Where should they find it?
At Lovelytics, we typically, if we're publishing something on Tableau Public that's just a sample, we make our data. So we use Macaru to mock up, simple data sets. So that's a free site where you can create the fields that you want, and it will automatically populate those fields based off of the data type and the name that you provided it with. It will populate that. That's Macaru, M-O-C-K-A-R-U with 2 O's. Then I also use data.world for a lot of data sets, and Google also has a data set search that you can do. So I typically just type in like sample marketing data set into Google and you'll get some stuff. If not, then I'll generate it myself.
Awesome. And then how did you create the upper metric field? That was something you just recently covered.
So upper metric is the metric itself. So each of the fields, I'll change this to white so you can see the background. So metric is a field in the data set. It has a list of all of the metrics, right? Well, this one is just on spend, but it has a list of all of the metrics. Upper is a Tableau function that just capitalizes everything. So it's just taking the uppercase of the metric field. So that's why everything in my dashboard has uppercase letters. And that's another thing that I learned with like modern design is typically like uppercase letters or lowercase letters, simple, clean, basic font types, things like that. So upper is just the upper function for metric. And there's also one for lower.
Cool. How did you mass deselect the worksheets in the actions?
Mass deselect the worksheets. I didn't mass deselect. Oh, I do. I know what you're talking about. To mass deselect, so you select dashboard, actions. And when you're creating a new action, everything is automatically selected. So to mask deselect, that was a weird way of saying it, but to mask deselect, you just click and drag down. I'm holding my mouse and I'm clicking and dragging down. And then when you do that, you just deselect, select, deselect. That's how you do that.
Cool. And then just digging through. How did you create the metrics calculated field, or can you review that?
Which the metrics calculated field, metrics. So the metrics here is a value, it's a number by itself. And then the calculated field for this is basically saying which value to display. So for the parameter selection, I created 3 different values. I created one for latest month. So when to display the latest month and what the value should be. So if the month is equal to the latest month in the data set. So I use a fixed level of detail calculation to find the max month in the data set, which is December 2019. If those two are equal, then I want to return the value. And I did the same thing for the quarter. So if the quarter in the data set is equal to the max quarter available in the data set, then show the value. And then I did the same thing for the year as well. So this is just looking, basically the difference between the fixed version of this and the regular version of this is the fixed version. This is determining what is your max value in the data set. What is your max year? What is your max month? So regardless of anything else, what is that latest month value? And then this is determining, this is basically just each of the month's value. So it's scanning your data set and it's saying, okay, here's January, here's February, here's March. Do any of these, January, February, March, equal up to the max value in the data set? And when it says December equals December, it's like ding, 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 and that's when it's returning the value. And then from there, I just created a parameter that said value to display. And that's basically just saying when the parameter is equal to latest month, then display that latest month value. When it's equal to latest quarter, display the latest quarter value. And when it's equal to latest year, then display the latest year value. That's that question.
And then I think we got time for one more. If we use more than one data source, right, in the case of blending, what do you think the level of difficulty, how much will it be increased to kind of run the same kind of modern dashboard with multiple data sources or data coming from 2 places?
So in terms of the difficulty may be in terms of this selection and filtering this view. That's where your difficulty may be, but it's not going to be with the parameter actions. So as you saw, our parameter action came from the clipboard, and then we use that same thing to pass the value towards it. I would say that if you have multiple data sources and you're doing a data blend, instead of doing like a dashboard filter action, which is limited based off of the data source, you try to use a parameter action instead. And that way you can pass that same parameter value to multiple data sources. That's how you get around that.
Cool. With that, thanks everyone for joining today. Thank you so much, Chantilly. And everyone, please be on the lookout for the recording here later this afternoon, early this evening. Take care, everybody.
Alrighty, bye.